Hello Zainey friends, thank you for joining us today. We have another episode of Eating Through Pawnee. Today we are making...
I keep saying it either bucket of cake or cake in a bucket.
It's bucket of cake.
Bucket of cake.
Bucket of cake. So we want to explain to you what bucket of cake is, but before we do, we want to tell you what you should do, right?
Yes, like down there, there's like, there's share, there's subscribe.
Yes.
Oh, and newsletters.
The newsletter is the most important thing when it comes to this series because the newsletter is how you're going to get a written version of all of the recipes that we do, that we make ourselves, that are not coming from a cookbook. So sometimes we do the cookbook ones and sometimes we make them up. All the ones from Pawnee are ones we make up ourselves. So if you want to get these recipes, make sure you subscribe to the link down below for the email newsletter. Comment Zainey fam down in the comments and we will be shouting you out in a future video one time. So you don't want to miss out on the recipes. For the first couple recipes, they are super simple, guys. Like you don't need to be an amazing chef. However, as we start going through the series, and I have 32 episodes planned already, so this is a very long series. As we start going through it, they get progressively more challenging.
And some of them we're going to have to interpret.
A lot. A lot. So today we are making bucket of cake. Now let's explain, this is from episode, what did I say, 6? Episode 6 of season 2. It is called Kaboom. And in this episode, Leslie, well actually everybody from the Parks Department, go to Eagleton, which is an interesting thing, and I'll get to that in a minute. They go to Eagleton to help this National Playground Association build a playground in one day, and they kaboom it. Now, for me, when we rewatched this episode a few times, now knowing what I know, this episode is kind of not factual, because what I mean by that is for Eagleton. First she says Eagleton is 2 towns over in this episode, which we know later on it's actually not. It's actually the next town over because there's a fence in between them. So that's wrong.
But maybe she's wishing they were 2 towns over.
Maybe. But that's the other thing, is that Eagleton is this rich, snobby town. Why would they be building this playground with a national playground organization that would raise funds for it? Like, that doesn't make sense to me because Eagleton would just buy their own because they're all rich snobs. But the show was still evolving. It was only season 2. We don't care. So, bucket of cake. You're thinking, really? Okay, this is where we get bucket of cake. At the beginning of the episode, the credit card fraud calls Leslie and says, hey, we just want to verify some charges. And they're on speakerphone, and Tom can hear it, and so they're like talking about a bunch of things. And one of the things, and it's brief, it's like 2 seconds, bucket of cake. And I was like, bucket of cake? Yes. So, for us, we think that Leslie's style bucket of cake is probably a bucket of cake. Like, it's probably huge.
But we aren't Leslie-style people.
No, we're not. We're doing little buckets of cake. And it is not just cake. And it is very similar, if you guys watched our Gilmore Girls episode, where we did the muffin bottom pie, it's kind of the same thing, but it's in a bucket instead of a pie with a bunch of other stuff.
And we're using slightly different cake. This, by the way, we got these over at Target.
Yes.
They're very cheap.
In the dollar spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually got 2 of them. Here's the other one.
And if you go, you could probably go to a dollar store and get the same thing. So this is really good for parties. You can just like make up a whole bunch of buckets of cake and then here you go. Just eat that.
Exactly. What we're going to do is make it kind of like a parfait style. So we got this, basically it's a sponge cake. It is from Entenmann's. It's like it says all butter loaf cake. You can use any kind of loaf cake. I was thinking angel food cake might be a little too light, so we're using more of a spongy cake. And then what else?
We have the Jell-O mix. We're going to be using also some half and half to be making that.
You can use butter, or not butter. You can use milk instead of half and half.
The recipe on the back does call for milk. Whole milk is good. We use half and half because that's what we have. And the Cool Whip. And because we are not from Pawnee, we are using the light version.
Exactly, because as you know, Leslie doesn't eat anything without Cool Whip. Although later on we'll be making recipes without Cool Whip. I will tell you that. There are a couple other toppings that we will be adding later that we will show you, but that is the basic ingredient. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to make the pudding first, right?
Yep. Start off with, we're going to just run with the Jell-O recipe that's on the back for the vanilla pudding. We're going to use 3 cups of your milk or something like that. And then the entire packet of the pudding mix. And we're just going to whisk that together once we get it all put in there. Whisk for 2 minutes. We whisked this for about 2 minutes, and we're just going to set it aside for 5 to let it soft set on its own. It can handle its own business while we do some other stuff.
For my part of it, I'm going to be doing the actual cake inside the buckets here. Because of how the buckets look, I think I'm going to be cutting them like this. We're using, and this is actually the perfect knife, we're using a serrated knife, which will nicely cut it down. I'm using these slices so that they're like this, not very thick. And I want to cut it at least halfway through because some of these larger pieces in the middle of the loaf I want to go on the bottom of the bucket. There's a little more surface area around like this, so we'll just stick one of those in the bottom. It doesn't matter if it breaks, you just want to kind of tuck it in there just so it fills the bottom of the bucket. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut the rest of this. So once you have that bottom layer in there, I'm going to go ahead and take the teeny ends, one of each, and lay that right on top. And the reason why I'm doing that is because when you put the big one in there and it kind of like bows out in the middle, we want to make sure that there's a really good bottom. So just go ahead and smush that all down on the bottom there. Granted, this will only work, my method will only work if you're doing 2. If you're doing more than that, then all you have to do is just put other pieces down in the bottom and smush it a little bit more. Alright, and now we've prepared our buckets for the pudding. Once the pudding sets up, we're going to start layering it on the inside.
We now have some very set pudding, but we're not quite done with it. Remember, when we did our muffin bottom pie, there was a step that I had forgotten, and we're not forgetting it this time. We're going to take half of the Cool Whip topping and dump it in there and mix it all together. And that's going to get the pudding even sweeter. This is going to form kind of like layers of icing and parfait. Like, we're doing this as a series of layers with cake and filling in between. So you're going to want to make sure you have a nice soft filling that will also seep into the cake. This, combined with the pudding, it's going to do that. And it's going to be nice and sweet and soft and flowy, which is the way we like it. Now for the fun part.
Our next step is to actually build the bucket. So now that we have the cake in the bottom, he's just going to spoon in a little bit of that right in there. Make sure it's just covered in a nice layer. You don't want to see any more cake. You don't have to smush it down. All you have to do is just drop it in there and then like spread it out.
Yep, just like that.
And when he's done with that, I'm going to take some more of the loaf and I'm just going to place that right on top. And I'm going to do 2 pieces of loaf at a time, and then we just are going to switch it out and loaf and pudding. Okay, this will be our last layer of loaf for this one. Starting to get to the top there.
And there's that.
Alright, so what I think we're going to do next is we are going to take our Cool Whip and we're just going to put a layer of Cool Whip. So here you see it right on top, there's the top of the cake. We're going to put a layer of Cool Whip right on top of there to kind of make a nice, like, what do you call it?
Just a topping.
Topping.
A whipped topping.
It'll be topping. And while he does that, I'm going to get some of our other things.
We're just going to spread it out over the top. We don't need it to be heaping, we just want it to cover.
And this is actually the chocolate syrup and the funfetti sprinkles left over from our gay penguin cake, which we did in our first Eating Through Pawnee episode. And I am just going to drizzle a little bit of that over there and a little bit of sprinkles on the top.
And while you might keep your Cool Whip in the freezer to keep it better for a long period of time. Do make sure that it's defrosted before you start doing this recipe, because this part gets a little hard to do when it's hard.
Bucket of cake. Comment down below if you like this at all, if you are excited about trying these recipes. What else do you want to see from us? We just got a couple books from my friend Cassandra Morgan, and she gave me a Bob's Burgers book and a Modern Family cookbook. We have a couple other ones, but right now we're probably going to be doing a lot of the Pawnee Parks and Rec recipes. But if there's anything that comes up that's really amazing, we might go back and forth. You never know.
So really, one loaf cake ended up making 2 of these.
And we had like maybe 1 left over, so.
But we do have a ton of pudding.
It is true. We have a ton of pudding. So thank you so much for watching. Make sure you join us next time. And until then,
stay zany.
Bye-bye.